Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're really glad you're here today for today's conversation, Startups in the Nonprofit Ecosystem, Building Bold Ideas from the Ground Up. I'm really excited to be facilitating this session today, and we're going to be talking to leaders who have launched mission-driven initiatives in different ways and exploring what it really looks like to start, adapt, and sustain something new in the nonprofit sector. My name is Robin Greaves. I am a nonprofit Hive Advisory Board member, and I'm also the co-founder of Pravi. Pravi is a tech platform which helps small charities in the UK access data insights and AI tools to help them grow online and find new donors. Now, if you're joining us live or if you're catching up on the replay, really thank you for being here. But if you are here live, we would love to know where you're tuning in from and what part of nonprofit or social impact ecosystem you're connected to. So please use the chat. Let us know where you are, what you're doing, what you want to build, or what you're currently building. And of course, there's absolutely no pressure to be polished in the chat. All your reflections, reactions, or questions that may come to you while our speakers are talking, please share them because we would love to hear them. So before we dive in, I'd like to thank our session sponsor, Common Cause by Laura Gale. Our sponsors are really important, and they mean that we can bring these type of conversations to you for free for anyone to join. Common Cause Grants and Consulting helps new and emerging human service organizations to identify, secure, and manage grants so they can devote more time to serving their communities. They know that grants, data, and organizational processes can feel overwhelming, and they're here to make them approachable, manageable, and achievable. Now, in terms of today's session, I'm going to hand over to our speakers in a moment to introduce themselves, but our focus, the topics that we're going to cover are how founders balance the energy of new ideas with learning how the broader nonprofit ecosystem actually works, what it looks like to stay committed to the problem while allowing the model or approach to evolve, the operational realities behind starting something new, from structure and sustainability to the day-to-day work of actually keeping momentum going, and how, as leaders, they navigate risk, pivots, and uncertainty without tying their identity to the survival of what they started. Now, we're going to go around. I'm going to ask our speakers to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their role, their organization, and also what drew them to today's conversation. And Matt, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. My name is Matt Fogarty. I am the founder of Cherry Willow Apparel. So we are a nonprofit apparel organization, and we use apparel to create wearable advocacy campaigns. And our particular area of focus is on addressing misconceptions around homelessness and the people that experience it. We also work with around 60 nonprofits nationally to give them an ability to use apparel as a marketing and branding tool to help increase the awareness in their communities of the amazing work that they do, and then also to add an additional stream of fundraising revenue by giving their supporters an alternative way to support that organization. And really, it comes down to giving people an opportunity to tell the story of the amazing work that they do, why they choose to support that organization, and encourage other people to get involved, even if it's something just as buying a shirt that can go a long way towards helping that organization sustain themselves.
Awesome. And is this one of your shirts that you're modeling for us today?
It is, yes. Got it made just for the occasion.
Love it.
And I am based outside of Chicago, Illinois, but we cover all different nonprofits all across the country.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, Matt. Sakito, can I ask you to briefly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, viewers and this great panel. My name is Sekito Kale Emmanuel. I'm calling in from Uganda. I'm in the capital called Kampala. I'm the founder and CEO of an organization called Faces Up Uganda. And what we do at Faces Up Uganda, we offer art-based mental health and psychosocial support programs for young people from underserved communities with the goal of creating an opportunity where they can heal from the traumas that many of them are facing, where they can learn creative skills, where they can earn from their creativity so that they can thrive at school, but also in life. Organization works at the intersection of mental health, psychosocial support, access to education, youth empowerment, but also sustainability. Our work, we work with children from 6 to 25 years. We work with children with disability, both intellectual and physical disability, as well as those with visual impairment. We also work with juveniles from one of the detention centers in the country, but also target young people from underserved communities. Our programs are actively across 35 primary schools, one juvenile center, and also a community art center where many of them come to. And I'm glad to connect with you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, Sakito. And then finally, Anouk, I'd love you to introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Anouk Bartner, and I'm the Executive Director at Future of Good. Future of Good is a media publication. We're based in Canada. We are the only media publication here who exclusively covers the social impact sector. That means charities, nonprofits, foundations, philanthropy, CSR departments, so corporate social responsibility folks, and government departments who also work in this space. And that's really important because this type of work needs its own voice, and it needs nuance in the reporting. And we do that through written, live, and data journalism. And then over this past few months, so in December, we received our RJO status, which is Registered Journalism Organization. So it actually makes us a charity ourselves. So that was a really exciting development. And we're based in Ottawa, Canada. And Ottawa is the capital here in Canada. Thank you.
Wonderful. And so thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I love that we have these different perspectives and sort of different viewpoints of what really like building something new can mean. And also, of course, being international is wonderful as well. So I'm going to kick off with our first question. And this is kind of something that I really love when I'm talking to people who have built something from scratch. And this is that when you start something new, it often begins because you have noticed a gap, something that's not being already fulfilled or something that's not working properly. And you believe that change is possible, that it's possible to do things differently. I think that's really powerful. I'd love to know, when you started building, how did you balance all your own drive and all the many ideas you might have with learning how the wider ecosystem works around you? And how did you build trust with people in the beginning before you really got started? And Matt, maybe we could come to you first.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a lot of these little phrases that I've come up with that tend to lend themselves well towards apparel campaigns. And so one of them that comes to mind when you ask this question is action is the answer. I think a lot of people stay too long in the idea stage. And the longer that you stay in the idea stage, the more attached to your own perspective that you can be. And what you find is once you start acting on your ideas and you start to get that feedback, then you have an opportunity to actually learn more about the problem you're seeking to solve and position yourself as the solution. So I come from a sales, marketing, and branding background. And as a salesperson, what you should do successfully is to really understand the nature of the problem that your clients are experiencing. And so that's, what I tried to bring to the space. And how did I build trust was just by being open, having conversations, and not leading with my perspective. I was more going into it being open-minded, inquisitive. And what I found was a lot of nonprofits are fantastic at what they do. They're fantastic at providing the service, but where they maybe fall short or could use a partner to help improve is how they communicate their impact to the community at large, who maybe doesn't interact with them on a day-to-day basis. So from a branding standpoint, apparel is a great way to get those stories out in the communities. And we originally started just thinking we were going to be a direct-to-consumer brand and only creating retail clothing for individuals to buy. And then through working with a lot of nonprofits, many of them weren't leveraging apparel. So I was able to consult with them, help to understand, what their vision was for the future, what a mission statement that we could capture in an apparel campaign that would give an opportunity to, have us connected more in person. Something I share a lot is it's amazing in the digital world. We're able to connect, being in Uganda and Canada and Chicago, but it also allows us to disconnect from the person right next to us. And so what apparel does is if you create an eye-catching graphic, a thought-provoking statement, hopefully that sparks a conversation, and then it gives somebody an opportunity to tell a story. And the only reason we came up with this model was through working with nonprofits, trying to understand where they could use support, and then creating a solution to support them.
I love that. I think it's like also we also say, you know, like action is the antidote to anxiety. So if you feel this feeling that like you don't like what's going on in the world, or there's something that doesn't sit right with you, just by taking a first step can help you feel that, okay, I'm going step towards like the world I want to see. I'm making a step forward. And Sakito, I'd love your thoughts on this one.
Thank you, Matt. Again, to be honest, I always say that I personally started this kind of work even before I started it. When people ask me, because myself, I grew up with a social conscious mom, and somehow she always found ways to be there for other people. Like, while I was young, I saw this was a very great example, and it taught me something that you don't need to have a lot to be in there for others. You just have to be having a kind heart, but also willingness. Myself, before I started any of this work, I used to play football, and my dream was to become a professional football player. And I knew that one day I would play for Liverpool, the team that I support. And I had the opportunity to travel to Europe. I got closer to the dream, but unfortunately, the time I was in Europe, I won all the trophies, but I never got scouted. And the dream of becoming a professional football player never happened. So coming back to Uganda, I came very disappointed. And then a few months after, I got a very serious football injury that got me out of football for a couple of months. But for me, I felt like all the time that I was playing football was preparing me for the work that I'm doing. Because without disappointment from not making it professional and getting an injury, I asked myself, what else could I do? So I went to university and then I pursued a bachelor's degree in nursing and fine art. Because of the example I saw from my mom, always being there for other people, when I got the skills at the art school, I was asking myself, how can I use them for other people? How can I use my skills to benefit other people? And because of that, I started offering free classes. So I can't tell you that this is the process that I took, but it was driven by the passion. It was driven by the example of my mom, but also asking myself, how do I be there for other people? So when I started offering free classes for young children, I remember it was around 2017. One of the children that attended the classes, she was a girl. She asked me a question: Are you going to graduate and find a job, or are you going to come back and teach us? Like, it was such a very simple question, but it showed me that what I had started doing was very important. And so for me, I was like, let me continuously create this platform where this little girl comes to have fun, but also express herself. And over the time, the work started evolving across the different realms that we are doing. But again, you are never prepared to start. You just wake up one day, you do something, the next day you do something else, the next day you do something else. Then you get the momentum and you ask yourself, no, I can't stop. I've already started. So for me, it was that drive, it was the interest, it was the passion. It's seeing those children smile because of the classes that I was holding. It's something that kept me motivated to keep doing all that I'm doing even today.
I love that. I mean, I love obviously shouting out for your mom as well. She sounds like an amazing woman. And also just that every single step is just the next, what's the next step? Then I'm going to do the next step. Don't worry too much about like everything that's going to come. It's all kind of leading up to that action. I love that. And Anouk, I'd love to hear what you think about this one.
Yeah, I'm going to add on to what we've already heard. These have been great responses. So I think it really comes down to start with the problem that you're trying to solve. I think when we start with our own solution, we fall in love with the solution. And our solution might be good in the moment, but situations evolve. And so if we fall in love with the problem, it really allows us to change our approach. And just an example of this is something that's been really inspiring to me. There's an organization in Calgary, Alberta, which is in Canada, which is called Fear is Not Love. And this is actually a rebrand from the Calgary Women's Shelter. And they decided, they did a whole bunch of surveys about domestic violence in the Calgary region. And they realized that they didn't have enough resources to build the number of shelters that they needed, and they needed to catch the problem upstream. So what they started to do is create counseling services for men, because there is no father, there is no man who wants to be an abuser. This is, just a really terrible situation that starts with cycles of violence and oftentimes involves substance abuse. And anyways, I think, you know, folks on the call here understand that it's a really complicated issue, but they have an entire suite of services for men now. And that's not what you would expect from a women's shelter, because they're trying to solve an issue holistically. And if they got really obsessed with building more and more women's shelters and more wraparound services for women, they fail to address the root problem. And to me, this is just such a beautiful example of a charity, of a nonprofit being brave in the community and doing something really important, and falling in love with the problem rather than their specific solution.
I love that. That's such a great example. And I'm literally writing down "fall in love with the problem" on my pad of paper now, because I think that's so important. And we're going to touch on a bit later on in this conversation, like how when do you know it's time to pivot? When do you know it's time to change? Because it can be so tempting when you're so deep into a solution. It can be easy to kind of, you feel like you're almost married to it in a way. So going on to our next question, actually talking about pivots and evolution. I'm sure in your journeys that you've all seen initiatives that have pivoted, that evolve, or like even stall, or sort of stop altogether. And so kind of basing on what Anouk was saying just then, how do you stay committed to the problem you care about without becoming overly attached to your original model? So how do you, as someone who's built something from scratch, how do you know when it's time to adapt? How do you know when it's time to let go? What signals are you looking for? And perhaps, Sakito, we could start with you for this one.
Thank you very much. Again, like they always say, sometimes it sounds cliche. Someone saying, never forget why you started. like, I can give an example of the organization that I lead, Faces Up. We started responding to creating spaces for children to express themselves. That was the only objective. Like, children come and learn, children come and express themselves. But over time, there's a little boy, his name is Mark. He came into our program. And on the day of his first class, he drew someone that was holding gun and shooting at people, which was a very different artwork compared to what other children had drawn. The second time, he drew when he was slaughtering animals, he was killing animals and leaving them to run. Another image that he drew when he had taken his life. Remember, we only wanted children to express themselves, but this child was drawing a lot of traumatic, violent-related images. So we asked ourselves, what's the reason behind why this boy is drawing all this? So after that, we were like, let's go and find out from their home. So we went to Mark's home. We realized that Mark was a refugee from South Sudan, and he had a lot of trauma. But never did we at any moment think that we could create a platform where children could tell us what was happening within their minds. But because of the artworks, we're like, oh, wow, there has to be a problem and we need to address this problem. So like, if he's not in position to tell us all what is happening in his mind and is using art, it means that this is going to be the means through which he tells us all and everything. So about 1 month, the little boy that was drawing guns started drawing flowers. Someone that was drawing people fighting started drawing children playing. Someone that could hardly smile, he became very active. Someone that could sit at the back started sitting in front. Someone that was not performing so well at school started performing better. And then we realized that, oh, it was the arts that gave him the platform to talk about all that was going through. And it's the art that helped him cope up with those traumatic experiences. So it's how, from that experience of this little boy, because we are paying attention to how he was relating with our work and how he was relating with our space, we realized that this means that we are giving to him was becoming beneficial to him. So we asked ourselves, how do we then give this same opportunity to other children, those that may not be in position to comprehend or even perhaps speak about what they are going through, and how do we use the arts as a means for them to express? So it's paying the attention, it's truly understanding why you exist as an organization, because for us, our space is how do we inspire young people to do what inspires them? That's our mission. And because of that mission, we are always asking ourselves, how do we inspire them? We are asking ourselves, how better do we serve them? What else can we fuse in? it's always a question of asking, how do we serve them better? And you find that some of the models that we started with are no longer working, because now we no longer create just a platform for them to express themselves, but we are intentionally extending psychosocial support using arts. It's something that has evolved over the years, but because of listening to the needs and how young people are interacting with our program. So thank you.
No, that's so, thank you for sharing that. And I think like that Matt maybe mentioned as well earlier, that like listening and that curiosity. So what you're doing is you're seeing what other people are doing, what people are saying, or what's working, and then kind of building on that as well. I think that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And Nick, would you like to share a bit about how you kind of stay committed to the problem rather than being, I guess, wedded to the solution?
For sure. And I also want to say my mom was an art therapist. And she has dozens of stories just like that about the incredible power of children and adults expressing themselves through art. And then the listening that comes with it, because the therapy part is not just the expression. So it's so beautiful that you were able to give back to kids and be there for it. This is a bit of a hard question, because I think it's a question around, when do we pivot? And it's so personal. It's so much about following your gut and thinking about, when, when do we change? And I think oftentimes about the expression that the 10-year overnight success story. Where oftentimes we love these narratives of overnight successes, and the reality is that there's 10 years of failure behind that, or 10 years of effort and continuous strain. So the way that I figure this out in my work is I try and let the market guide me to some extent. So I'm not like a hyper capitalist or anything, but I do look for signals. So it comes down to signal discernment. So are people signing up for Future of Good, for our publication? Are they paying for our learning events? Are they sharing our articles and the pieces that we post on LinkedIn? And if I hear absolute crickets, that's the time where it's sort of like retool. Like, why is this not resonating? Is it about the way that it's packaged? Is it too expensive? Are there other things happening in the ecosystem? Or is it, is it just the wrong offering? And I think trying to really engage in that with curiosity is important, because our work feels so tied to ourselves, and I don't want to feel like it's a rejection of me or of my team or of our work, but sometimes it does feel that way. So just trying to step into the space of curiosity and think about, okay, well, why isn't this working, and being willing to engage in conversation with folks. So that's kind of how I step into it, but I don't think there's any magic here. It's just, you just have to put one foot in front of the other and do it.
Yeah. And I think you're right. You're listening, having curiosity, looking at the data, looking at what people are saying. And I think I know for me, sometimes there can be a kind of sunk cost fallacy in this, where you've spent a lot of time and energy on something already. And so you want to keep going with it, but not everything works out. And that's okay. It's okay to kind of move on. Matt, I'm sure you've got some great feelings on this as well. I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah. For me, I think it comes down to remembering why you set out on this journey in the first place. And for us in homelessness, it's a huge problem in the States and also internationally. And, there are a lot of proven solutions that are out there, like Housing First, and, countries like Finland have done a great job using this solution. But when I was trying to figure out, what can I do? How can I do it differently? There's 1.9 million nonprofits in the United States alone. And so I thought that rather than trying to create a direct services organization or try to compete with funding for organizations that were already providing high quality housing services, how can we come together, collaborate, and increase the awareness? And so that's really, kind of what drew me. And I think there's a large problem in the nonprofits of competition versus collaboration, where there's so many wonderful organizations that in a lot of instances are seeking to help the same groups of people. And so that's, what we came in, like my original model, again, was just to be more of a retail direct-to-consumer brand. But in working with a lot of these nonprofits, they didn't have huge budgets, to order apparel. And so what we then created was a system to allow them to offer apparel out without having them to have the burden of inventory. Working with a lot of nonprofits, I knew that they were largely, underfunded, overworked, and they were not looking to add something to their plate. So, in creating the apparel, we created a turnkey solution for nonprofits to make it easy to partner with us. And so I think, based on both of what the other speakers have shared, where is that resistance and what can I do to remove some of those barriers? So, when I was originally setting out for these nonprofits, asking them to buy inventory wasn't a sustainable model. So instead we pivoted to just let's create an e-commerce shop for them and, make it so that we design the graphics and then they can offer this with no resistance. They don't have to have the burden of fulfillment. They don't have to sell this. It's just something that's available for them. And again, kind of listening to them, where else could we help? We started to do more on the content side, where, as these nonprofits, to get their message out in the community, apparel is just one pillar of a successful campaign. I biked from Sacramento to San Diego last July and met with 7 different nonprofits. And the reason we picked that route was it was 7 of the 14 cities with the highest number of people experiencing homelessness in the country. And it was so amazing getting to meet with these wonderful organizations and hearing their stories. And one of the common threads was, as I had seen here with also Sakito and his story, was he created something that wasn't available for him. And a lot of these nonprofits, they created a safe space that they didn't have when they were in their youth or whenever they needed it. And so kind of giving more awareness. And the goal of our work is to inspire people that are sitting on the sidelines right now to take action. And, even if that action, again, is just following a nonprofit on social media, being a supporter of a nonprofit, meeting someone that's experiencing homelessness and asking them their name. There was a really powerful story that I learned from one of the guests at the warming center that I serve at, where he shared he had a friend that was suicidal. And all it took was one conversation with one person who was kind to them, and they changed their mindset and they did not end up going through with it. And so, that one act of kindness can save a life. And we never know what people that we're coming across are carrying. So just, treat them with kindness, treat them with empathy. And, then that's a great way to be a part of the solution.
I love that, Matt. Thanks for sharing that. Also, it's probably a good time to say that, if you are listening to us live, please also share your comments or any reflections that you have while our speakers are sharing in the chat, because there's so many really powerful examples that everyone is sharing. And I love someone else sharing a shout out there to Sakito's mom as being a powerful figure in his life. So I'm going to kind of build on, I'm imagining the people in the audience now. I'm imagining that there's people who are in the middle of a building journey, some people who may have been building for years and years and years. But I am thinking in the audience, there's also going to be people who are thinking about building something. And so I really want to kind of focus on them and how can we get people to start. So when, beyond the mission, beyond that North Star idea, we know that building something sustainable requires lots of different things that maybe we don't consider in the beginning, like structures and systems, and also, of course, our care and our dedication. And I'm wondering what surprised you most about the day-to-day operational reality of starting something, and what you would share with someone who feels called to build something new, but isn't sure they're ready. And Luke, perhaps we could start with you on that one.
Sure. I think the thing that really surprised me is even when the work is really strong, so the programming is good and you have the staff in place, there still are problems, and they can oftentimes feel very crushing. And I don't know why this is surprising to me, but I've been in this situation a few times that it seems that sometimes when you're at your operational peak and you can see the mission is totally accomplishing what it needs to, there can be some really significant financial issues. And I really see this as sort of a business operational model issue. And it's not that there's not enough revenue, or it's not that there's no revenue, it's that the revenue doesn't match the outflow. So it really becomes a business model issue. And I thought this was very personal. And I think this is why forums like this are really important. And I really did want to share this, is that when you're experiencing financial issues, it always feels very challenging to talk about it in an open forum. And it feels very personal. Like, I have done something wrong, therefore we are in this financial struggle again, and I have to like watch out about how to pay payroll, and I have to like keep the expenses tight. And I had an experience in Ottawa probably about 8 years ago where I had organized this in-person session, and there was a woman there who had established a very successful set of coffee shops across Ottawa, and I had invited her to speak. And on the same day, there was a snowstorm. So basically, it wound up being like just her and I. And anyways, it was totally amazing. But she shared with me that she had just built this roastery. And so it was an enormous capital outlay, and they were a sustainable coffee shop. So they were trying to do everything with ceramic, different types of, reusable cutlery. And she was just saying that, she was really struggling figuring out how to pay for this. And they were going to hit a really serious cash cliff. And, it was awful to hear, because you never want to hear about someone else's struggle, but it was so reassuring for me as a social entrepreneur and someone who cares so much about the work, that even people who look so successful on the outside and seemingly have this really, this business model that works, like, they're struggling too. And I think the more we share that with each other, like, that's a really strong form of solidarity, that you can do all the right things and still struggle. And it's, sometimes success is survival. And that's what I think about. If your organization is around in 10 years, like, that is success.
Yeah, there's always more to do. That's the thing. So there's always more work to be done. But I totally agree. And I think like that's why communities like Nonprofit Hive are so important, because then we talk to one-on-one, or when we talk to other people who are doing things in space, we realize we're not alone. The gloss of social media can sometimes make us believe that, everyone else is doing amazing and we're the only ones struggling. And that's just 100% not the case.
Well, it's the highlight reel, right? It's what we see on LinkedIn and Meta and all of these different places where, like, oh my gosh, they got another grant, and like, they're opening this program. Like, that's so exciting. And you don't see the incredible like heartbreak on the inside, because nobody shares those moments.
Yeah, 100%. Matt, how about you? What would you share with someone who feels called to feel something but isn't sure how to get started?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the starting is the most important step. I think, like I mentioned in the first question, action is the answer. And as you said, like, to anxiety or whatever the problem is, because the reality is, until you start, you really don't understand that problem and how it's going to be received. And so, the operational side of things is not my strong suit. So where I was able to be successful is operating on a who, not how methodology. It's a really great book for anyone out there, but it essentially reframes your brain from, instead of asking how am I going to solve this problem, it's who is great at this and would love to help me solve this problem. So for us, like, one of the things that was really surprising was just how challenging it is to start a nonprofit. And like, we thankfully have an incredible director of compliance, Dana, who, has helped over 4 dozen nonprofits get off the ground, and, took care of the 1023 filing and the 9 months it took for the IRS to, give us the 501c3 status. But, that's something that I didn't realize there was so much resistance towards. And if I didn't find my who was really great at the operational and the administrative side of things, it would have been really challenging to be able to continue to build. And so that's what I would suggest for anybody that is thinking about starting, is just like, sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees, but, ask yourself, can you see the next right step? And then just focus on that next step, take that step. And then the next thing you know, you're walking and you're making a lot of progress. And just surround yourself with people that believe in you, with people that believe in your mission and want to support you. There's a lot of people, like to your points, that create these projections of how they want to be perceived across social media. But if you talk to the people that have built something or have started something from the ground up, how challenging it is. There's a reason why 95% of businesses don't make it beyond 5 years. And so to Anouk's point, survival is success. And I think that, if you're going to start something, you have to be willing to commit yourself to doing the work, and not, especially if you can, don't be in a position to need financial success right away. That I would say is a recipe for failure, because no matter what business that you're trying to build or nonprofit you're trying to build, it takes time to build that foundation, to create supporters, and to build that trust in whatever community that you're trying to make a difference in. So, just start it, alongside a full-time job. It took me 2.5 years of working full-time while building Cherry Willow before I was in a position to go full-time. So, be committed to the work, committed to the mission. Find people that believe in you and surround yourselves with people that have more experience than you. If you can find a mentor, someone else that has built things from the ground up. I was fortunate to get connected with my co-founder, David, who, he's built multiple different startups in the past. And so he knew a lot about some of the different challenges that we were going to run into, and sometimes you're able to learn from the mistakes of others, and some mistakes you have to learn on your own. But just being able to surround yourself with those people, I think that's the best likelihood of being successful. And again, just knowing that, I think to Anouk or Sakito's earlier point, a lot of times in society, we see people at the mountaintop, and that's when we laud them. But we do not see the ups and downs and the years that it took them to get there. So just know that, like, you're on the right path and continuing to take those steps forward, and, sometimes a step backward. But as long as you keep moving, then you're in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's so true to find, you can't be good at everything, but there are people out there who are good at the things that you're not good at. So my co-founder deals with all the spreadsheets, and that means I don't have to. But there are people that love spreadsheets. And so you can find people who have those complementary skills along the way. And I always find people are really willing to help as well when you ask. So Kito, I'd love to come to you and could you share something about what you would share with someone who feels called to build but doesn't feel ready yet?
Absolutely. Again, I will use myself as an example. When you start this organization, you are very passionate about it. You have the passion, you wake up in the night, you have ideas, you sold to this idea. But sometimes, because we're starting these initiatives, we got sold to this idea, and then we feel like everyone should. Sometimes we're in a position where, I love this thing works, this thing is powerful, and you think everyone should love it. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't happen. And because it works, but people have not accepted it yet, sometimes you can get discouraged and you think no, these people are crazy. How can you not love something like this? So sometimes you need to accept that it takes time for people to get appreciation of what you're doing. To get that acceptance, it takes a bit of time and comes with the credibility, but also seeing what you have done. And I was surprised that with this incredible organization that I started, it took us a lot of time to raise resources. I feel like we have done this work. Everyone should give us money. We should serve the children. We should but then I always feared to ask for support, financial investment. Because I was people will see me asking for money. How can I'll be like a beggar? But one of my mentors told me, as a founder of the organization, when you ask for investment, you are not asking for yourself. You are asking for the people that you serve. He told me that statement. It changed my perspective around it. Sometimes when you're starting your initiative, you may be not so good at asking for help. And asking for money is even harder. So when you're asking for the investment, for the grant, for the donations, it's not for yourself. It's for the cause and the people that you serve. When I understood that, the weight of asking went off my head, because I know I'm just the vessel. I'm representing other people, and these people are giving to me to serve the people. So I'm just like a pipeline. So when you know that, it never gets hard.
Yeah, I love that. I think that really leads really nicely into my last question. I know we only have 5 minutes left. It's gone super, super quick. And we're going to come around, so maybe we can do a little quick fire round for this one. But we talk a lot about starting, but maybe we don't talk a lot about slowing down or pivoting or even closing something. How do you build something bold without tying your identity or your personal worth entirely to its survival, entirely to this external thing? I'd love to hear just a quick answer from everyone, but I'll start with Anouk. I know it's a big question for a short answer, sorry.
Yeah, to me, it's about understanding that everything has a life cycle. So all biological beings have life cycles and ecosystems have life cycles. And so seeing that an organization can have a life cycle too, that's where I get most of my inspiration and most of my understanding of the world is from biological systems. And I just want to say quickly that transitioning out is just as important as starting. And what that means for me is, thinking about employees, funders, volunteers, allowing them to process what closing means, paying out severance if you have staff. It means transitioning online assets such as websites, mailing lists, social media. So, send those to another organization that might be able to use them. And just ending well, giving people the chance to grieve.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's my identity is not wrapped up in what I've created with Cherry Willow, but it's more about being a person that's working to be part of the solution. So, whether my part of the solution that I've created is successful and continues to be a way that I can contribute, or, if it is something where it's not sustainable, we're not able to generate the revenue for ourselves or for the people that are supporting us, then finding a way that I can continue to serve the mission and serve the people. That's really where my identity, lies, is how can I best serve these people and help others. And so whether that be through Cherry Willow or through another outlet, there's always an opportunity to continue to do that work, even if it's not how you originally thought.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And then Sakito, I'll come to you finally.
Again, all the questions you're asking about my personal life.
Sorry, I'm digging deep.
I know, right? No, you see, before I can even attempt to answer the question, I've seen that people that start initiatives from passion, sometimes their identity is tied around the issue that they're working on. Because they truly love this, they want it to work. It's something that they're passionate about. But then over the years working with this, leading this organization, I started with this passion, but I realized that the life or the survival of this organization is not entirely my responsibility. It's a shared responsibility of the people that join as team members. And the same passion that I have, if I did and shared 50% of it with everyone, then it becomes a shared responsibility. When I realized that, I started to not feel so sold to the organization. I know I'm part of the team that is contributing to it. Even though I founded it, but I'm part of the contributing factor. So somehow I separated myself from the organization and myself.
Yeah, I love
so for
that.
me, it's that shift of the passion to other people, that shared responsibility, knowing that the organization is not you, you are part of it.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I can't believe we're almost going to be out of time here, but I really want to thank all three of you for sharing really openly and honestly. I think I've taken so much away myself from this conversation. And also thank everyone who's joined us live. Please follow the Nonprofit Hive on LinkedIn. Please also follow or connect with our speakers because they share lots of really interesting, great insights on LinkedIn as well. And visit nonprofithive.com for upcoming sessions and community offerings. And lastly, I'd just like to thank again Common Cause by Laura Gale, who was our sponsor for this session. Thank you all for joining. Thank you so much to our speakers. This has been a wonderful conversation. And let's all carry on the conversation offline. Please connect with us. We'd love to chat more. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.